This is a recording of the Fintech Talk Show held live on Clubhouse on July 20th, 2021. Here's your host. Welcome to another edition of Fintech Talk. I'm your host, Paddy Ramanathan from the iValley Innovation Center in San Francisco Bay Area. We have a great lineup of speakers from around the world, so I'm not going to take up too much time on the intro, but real to set the conversation up. And also a little bit about iValley for those who are new here. iValley is a third-generation startup factory in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. We host these shows to talk about the future we're building with our partners and startups. We've had great engagement with these sessions on Clubhouse, with topics ranging from the future of crypto economy to embedded finance, to the future of wealth management, to crypto startups from around the world. That was our previous show. And even the future of media and events. If you missed any of those shows, we have them recapped. And from today, we're going to have them recorded and published as podcast on our Substack, which is fintechtalk.substack.com. So do check out and subscribe to that if you're interested in these topics. Today's session is about challenger banks and fintechs for small business, the powerhouse of the economy. We have a great lineup, as I mentioned, who I will introduce momentarily. But let me start with this really inspirational quote from the painter Vincent van Gogh, the Dutch painter, for those who know. Great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Let's talk about that beautiful thought today, starting small and thinking big. You will see that sentiment echoed during the show today. I'm delighted to welcome an eclectic group of dynamic visionaries who are shaping the world of small business technology. Let me start. Paul Loberman, Chief Product Officer at Untied. Adi Engel, she's the Chief Marketing Officer at Visita. Nir Netzer, Fintech Innovation Strategist and Founding Partner at the Equitech Group. Araminta Robertson, Marketing Consultant at the Mint Studios. Nathan Baumeister, CEO at Z-Suite Technologies. And last but not least, Derek Sutton, he's marketing at Autobooks. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, Paddy, great to be here.
Great. Let's have some brief opening remarks about the folks on the stage. You can talk about your company, anything else you want to include in your introduction. Let's start. Let's do ladies first. Adi, you want to go first?
Well, thank you so much. That was a 50-50 call, right? So I'm glad to have won the draw. Thank you so much for having us. And yeah, I love that quote to start with. Small things brought together. And if anything for today, I think we can definitely talk about the bringing together element, because we're looking at, challenger banks and fintechs building an ecosystem to help small businesses, and that's crucial for this time. Our perspective on this, Visita has been building tools for small businesses to digitalize their business operations for 10 years now. We help them manage their clients, their time, and their money. And we're basically looking to simplify and automate as much of their day-to-day, because we realize that eventually their time is their most precious thing. Always has been, and now more than ever. And, coming to this conversation, very much looking forward to hear everyone's insights from their different perspectives on, how can we, again, as partners, as an ecosystem, best serve that segment that is, by far, for me, the most exciting segment in the economy these days.
Yes, I agree, and some have been hurt for the last 15 or 18 months on COVID. So all the more important that we address that. Thank you, Adi. Who wants to go next? Paul, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I'm based in London. I accidentally fell into banking and finance many years ago, but it's probably a story for another day. But I spent most of my career at Santander, on the bank side. I also worked for Barclays and HSBC, did a load of digital transformations in the UK and US. But I kind of fell in love with the small business segment when I moved back to London. I spent 6 years in the US as well, and worked for HSBC as global head of digital for business banking for a few years. And I got to travel around a lot. We rolled out a new proposition across 10 countries and really kind of got to listen to business owners and help solve some of their problems. And that's where I kind of fell in love with this segment and saw, what an amazing opportunity there was to help small business owners and saw that they were underserved. So I lucky enough that when I left HSBC, I joined a startup. So I've now kind of been both sides of the fence, on the banks and the startup and the fintech side. And I'm chief product officer at Untied. We're the UK's personal tax app. So everybody knows nobody likes to pay too much tax. Everybody gets worried about getting it right and doing filings. And that goes for small businesses too. And in the UK, small business owners, self-employed, property landlords, they all file personal taxes. And we have an app that gathers their bank transactions using open banking, makes tax sense of them, and then we prepare their filings automatically and send them to the tax authority straight through. So, as Addy says, this is all about kind of saving time, and doing your taxes can take a lot of time. In the UK, it's kind of manual process, so we're trying to automate that for small business owners.
Wonderful. Are you coming to the US anytime? Maybe I should check you out.
Well, maybe in the future, but at the moment we're very focused on the UK. There's enough work to do here, but yeah, maybe we'll get into that during the conversation. But it's exciting area.
Sounds good. Yeah. And underserved, your point, I'll underscore that, right? Small business traditionally be underserved. So it's great to see the kind of the focus and the momentum from startups like yours and Addy's. So great. So I see a lot of folks have just come in. So we're just doing an opening round, guys, and we'll talk about the startups and the future of small business fintechs. There's a lot going on there. So hang in there. Let me go next, maybe to Nathan.
Great. Excited to be here, Paddy, and talking to everybody. Name's Nathan Baumeister, the CEO of a company here in the US called Z Suite Technologies. We work directly with banks in providing them technology to help them compete with getting more business clients, and our focus is to give them technology that's built to allow them to fulfill niche strategies. And so the way that we're currently doing it is we have a escrow and sub-accounting system that can be used and configured for the different types of businesses that need escrow and sub-accounting. There's a whole bunch of different rules and regulations depending on the industry, depending on which state they're in, depending on which city they're in, that if they are managing escrow deposits or sub-accounts, the different rules they need to follow. So along with many of the talking points that we've heard so far, in the end, it's for the bank to allow their business clients to save time and just to also help them be more secure and understanding of the compliance that they find themselves in and that they're operating in.
Great. Very niche area, and love to learn more how that kind of addresses some of the small business pains too. But welcome Nathan. Maybe go around to Derek next.
Hey, Paddy. So in addition to running the Nathan Baumeister fan club, I also lead marketing at Autobooks. And so what Autobooks does and really what we're all about is we embed and integrate digital invoicing, online payments, in-app payment acceptance tools, plus cash flow management, accounting, and reporting tools directly into digital banking environments so that financial institutions kind of recapture the relationship with a business owner, so that now a business owner can sign up directly with a financial institution in the US to accept customer payments, to send digital invoices, and not have to use a third-party provider like PayPal or Square or what have you. So really helping financial institutions recapture and better serve and monetize those small business relationships.
Great. Thanks. I see some folks raising hand as well. There's a new tool, back channel in Clubhouse. It's kind of like a paper clip or paper airplane type icon right about the microphone for me. So if you want to send your questions to me, I'll feed them in and I'll bring you up as well. But thanks, Derek, for that introduction, and both you and Nathan, and great that you're also a part of Nathan's fan club. Are kind of directing your go to market is with not direct to consumers or small business, but to financial institutions. I'd like to kind of drill down on that later in the show. But thank you for those remarks. Araminta, maybe go next.
Sure. Thank you, Paddy, for having me on. It's a pleasure. It's great to be with such great panelists. So really, I'm a marketing consultant for fintech companies. I help fintech companies acquire and retain customers online with written content. And really, I'm also a podcaster and newsletter writer. I think what I can bring to the table here is more how do other fintech companies target small business owners, their marketing strategies, successful and not successful. I do a lot of case studies, a lot of analysis, and I've been talking with fintech companies like Oak North and like many others. I mean, Untied also, as Paul knows. So I'm hoping to, just share kind of their successes, what's worked for them, and it's always great to have a lot of ideas and any other obviously marketing tips that I know, and digital marketing as well. So yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Would love those insights. I think that's very useful for not only the speakers but also folks in the audience. So thank you, Araminta, for joining and sharing that perspective. Last but not least, Nir, tell us, you're kind of more of an incubator, but tell us your opening remark.
Hi, Paddy. Thanks for having me. So not quite an incubator. Yeah, I'm the chairman of the Israeli Fintech Association, Fintech Aviv. So we are in touch with a bunch of Israeli fintechs from all the range. We're also working with financial institutions to help them scout for innovation. So we're actually mitigating the gaps between these fintechs who are looking for their new clients and between the challenger banks and the traditional financial institutions who are looking for innovation to deploy or to invest in. So that's what we do. My background, I used to work for Ernst & Young for a few years. And 7 years ago, I founded the Israeli Fintech Association along with Equitech Group. This is our fintech consultancy. So great to be here, and I hope I can contribute value here and in the next hour or so.
Thank you. Yeah, and we usually go a little over an hour, but Nir, thank you. And we've had some other folks from the Middle East and Israel on the show, so we'd love to get that kind of meta or macro perspective of what you're seeing from the fintech sitting in Tel Aviv. Thank you all for your opening remarks, and for those in the audience, as I said, we're recording the show. If you have some questions for the speakers, just back channel the little icon there to me, and I'll try to get them in the conversation. I think everyone talked about some of the challenges here, right? Small business, they're typically underserved, and the digitization has been kind of on the lower side. So maybe let's do an open round and set the context, right? What are the current challenges for small business, the community some of you or most of you are trying to serve? And what is the case for digital transformation? We've heard umpteen number of times the case for digital transformation for the enterprise. But what is the case for digital transformation and innovation for small business? Open round, so go ahead, whoever wants to go first.
This is Nathan. I'll just jump in real quick. It's interesting when you focus on small businesses, there's multiple challenges that they run into. One of the challenges that most of them aren't running into is that the technology, whether or not the technology exists to help them run their businesses more efficiently. Technology is out there across multiple spectrums to help run their business. However, they oftentimes don't have the time to be able to evaluate the different solutions. They don't have resources to be able to evaluate them and learn about them, to implement them, and oftentimes they don't have the money to be able to actually get them installed. And so, though there has been a lot of digital innovation in the commercial sector to be able to help a lot of these folks, small businesses oftentimes aren't able to actually use them because of the complexity, the cost, et cetera, of kind of those larger enterprise solutions that are out there. And with that, that leaves a big space for a lot of companies that have grown recently in the last few years, but it's still very, very much a growing market and a place where, whether it be banks or direct-to-consumer fintechs, to really be able to make a big grab there.
Go ahead, Adi.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Nathan's point. I think definitely time is an issue, but from our perspective, where we have a product that's been designed specifically for micro businesses, I would say that it's not necessarily a question of budgets or setup time, but rather the ability of quite a few people that's not unique to small business owners to articulate a need. Go ahead on whatever on Google, search for it, find whatever landing page, start the 14 days trial. I think there is, the lack of potentially good, valuable advice on what systems do I need. There's a lot of information out there, a lot of people competing for those business owners' attention, that potentially could be the gap. And what we found is that eventually, and this is again across many segments, many verticals, this is not unique to small business owners, that early adopters at the end of the day are under 10% of the market. And if we're looking to have a level of engagement and conversation with any of the other adoption phases of technology, we have to find them where they are, as opposed to them coming to find us. So I think this is definitely where the bank partnerships come in, the channel partnerships come in, and obviously we're going to expand on that later on. But I feel like the discoverability gap is what's in particular stopping some of our potential customers in finding us.
Got it. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Derek.
yep. Yeah, I agree with that. So, and the reason in the macro is because just time and the resource budget conversation they're always having with themselves. So what I mean by that is, in the U.S. economy, you've got 31.7 million business owners that are kind of registered with the SBA. 81% of those businesses don't have any employees. Of the remaining 19%, over 80% of them have less than 4 employees. So what that tells us is that most small business owners in the US they're the person performing the trade, the craft, offering the service, but they're also managing payables, managing receivables, et cetera, et cetera. What happens because of that is they, in many cases, react to the market and they react to customers, specifically when it comes to getting paid and things of that nature. So if I'm a business owner, I have a cash flow problem consistently. Every small business owner in the economy typically has a cash flow problem. And the cash flow problem is always, I'm looking for ways to compress day sales outstanding. The shift that's happened and taken place in banking is accepting customer payments has really moved, and it was accelerated in 2020 from in-person cash and check to now online and digital, in-app, etc. And so the whole small business market is having to react to really customer demand and customer shift of, okay, how do I want to pay you? If you just start with that simple premise of how do I accept customer payments now, being interrupted, disrupted, whatever you want to use, I'm having to react to that. My reaction is I now start to download a plethora of third-party fintech apps because that's what my customer says. Hey, do you accept PayPal? Do you accept Venmo? Do you accept Cash App? What have you? Then my bank comes in and do you accept Zelle? And so forth and so on. And now we've taken business owners and we've really fragmented the way that they accept customer payments. We fragmented the way they look at cash flow. We fragmented their central bucket of access to capital and working capital, all compounded on a category that already had cash flow problems. And so now we're making it even worse. And so I think when we kind of look at this market and we're looking at the technology, but the upside opportunity is helping them with that problem, which I think simply putting them back in control and at the front of how can we simplify cash flow for you, which traditionally or most importantly starts with how can we make it simpler for you to be in control of accepting customer payments. And then from there, there's all sorts of things we can do with data, access to capital, things of that nature. But hopefully that makes sense. Like that's to me the major starting point with the technology disruption and what's ahead of us for small business.
Can I just jump in
Yeah,
there?
go ahead.
Because I agree with Derek there in terms of that small business owners tend to spend more of their time on the kind of non-core activities of their business. We used to say that they spend more time on their business than actually in their business. And really they want to spend time in their business, growing it, marketing it, recruiting teams, and they spend too much time on some of the non-core activities and even too much money on some of those things, whether that take them away from actually doing the stuff that they want to do. And we talk a lot about jobs to be done and the needs of business owners. And there's a lot of focus on the challenges. They tend to always be focused on the financial side of things, in terms of like what can people, so what do business owners need to do. They need to get paid. They need to control their costs. They need to manage cash flow, exactly as Derek said. But there's two other things that they spend too much time on, which are a real challenge, which is staying compliant, whether that's kind of legal or whether that's with tax, whether that we cover, and admin, right? There's one of the biggest challenges is there's just so much paperwork and so much admin, even on the banking side, that takes away the time and really saps that kind of energy from business owners. So when I think about challenges for small business owners, I always try and think whether that's not just financial issues around cash flow, it's also just a lot of the bureaucracy and admin that they need that taken away.
No, very true. They don't have like an army of lawyers or accountants and stuff usually. And how can technology help? No, wonderful point, Paul. Any other points
Eddie,
here, Armenta? Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I want to take Paul's point and talk about also the sales aspect in the business. So, I'm usually working with fintech companies offering different technology solution to financial institutions, either if it's banks or investment houses, credit card bureaus, or insurance companies. So, it's always hard for these small businesses to offer their products and to speak the same language as these huge conglomerates. Usually what we do is actually to mitigate these gaps and to translate the languages to help the young companies or the small and medium businesses to understand the real need of the financial institution, the real challenge, the real technological challenge, and actually answer the technological challenge, because many companies are solving problems that are not exist out there. And the big challenge is to understand what is the problem that needs to be solved and to answer with technology or with your value proposition, with your service or with your product. So we are there to basically help these small businesses to understand the problem and to answer with a proper solution. So, I agree with Paul. There are so many aspects in small and medium businesses, and I think that the most challenging, one of the most challenging aspects is probably sales and marketing. And I wanted to emphasize this as well.
Yeah, we're going kind of the full circle, right? And obviously sales and marketing towards the end, but it has to be early in the conversation. But a lot to unpack there. Armenta, did you have a view based on your discussions with some of the bigger fintechs, perhaps, before we kind of jump into the next round?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has highlighted kind of the main challenges. I'm just going to mention another one that I've written about a little bit, which is new regulations like PSD2 and SCA. A lot of these small companies, or especially if they're selling online, are having to learn about the intricacies of SEA and 3DS2, which is just like a protocol to make online payments a lot more secure. And basically, what Paul said, compliance, and then understanding, okay, well, we need to be compliant, but also how can we kind of maximize this new regulation and make sure it doesn't cause a huge increase in drop-off rates. There was, because I've been writing about this for Spain specifically, and there's some studies that are saying that like the 3DS2 could cause like authentication rates as low as 21% and a huge loss, like billions of euros, just because it's a new way of making online payments. Customers are not used to it. And so kind of merchants and small businesses are going to have to adapt to that. And that's just like another hurdle in itself. A lot of education in there, a lot of kind of explaining how these new regulations work. And then obviously, how can we make sure that these regulations enable rather than inhibit these small businesses? So just another challenge I thought I'd mention.
Interesting. Yeah, they have less lobbying power, right? So it at least in the U.S. So I'm sure it's similar in other geographies. So no, interesting point. So a lot to unpack here. So I took some notes. So I think the main kind of overarching, if I can underscore that, so small business owners typically, like, they're individuals, but even if they're a small team, they're spending a lot of time in the business and not on the business. And how can we kind of solve that or help them with technology on that? So that starts with operational issues, financial issues. Yeah, something that banks should be helping them with their relationship managers and all, but maybe there's some opportunities there. And to Nir's point around sales and marketing, they have to not only operate the business but grow it as well. So what help do they need? And Paul and Araminta there around the whole existing regulations as well as new regulations come in. So there's a lot to unpack there. Maybe we'll take the operational part, the financial part, and sales and marketing and legal and compliance, and kind of break it down and maybe give you guys an opportunity to say, where are you helping with your startup, with your product? You're digitizing a lot of this. Maybe kind of talk about that as to how you're addressing some of these problems for small businesses. And maybe we can flip the rounds a little bit. Derek, do you want to go first?
Sure. I would just kind of offer up very simply, as Addy mentioned earlier, one of the key components is discoverability. And so when you look at discoverability plus all of the operational efficiencies we discussed, and I'll just keep this very brief, our thesis is integration and distribution through the financial institution channel offers a lot of efficiency for us as a company, but also helps really enhance discoverability, trust, and adoption at the end user level as well. So, case in point, if I'm a business owner, I already have an established relationship with a financial institution. There's some level of trust, but there's also an additional level of KYC, longstanding, performance with the financial institution, and other benefits that can make it simpler to onboard and really start to establish a relationship and provide benefit to an end business by distribution through that channel. And then also in turn offer additional benefit back to the financial institution by increasing and enhancing their business offerings and quite frankly, their ability to compete against third-party fintech providers. And so that's our, kind of related to this conversation, that's where I think we kind of offer some efficiency for the business owner themselves, helping them level up quicker, and then at the same time providing some benefit and utility back to the ecosystem and the financial institution.
Got it. Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, Derek, but thanks for bringing it up, right? The direct versus partnering or using a channel like a financial institution. So good remarks there, and we'll drill down a little bit. Maybe go to Paul. So we talked about Untied's kind of focusing on simplifying tax returns. I guess the question is how and why, and I think you addressed this a little bit. Why is this such a critical activity for small business?
Yeah, sure. So actually, when I kind of think back to the jobs to be done for small business owners, we cover quite a few of them with some of the features of our app. But the main thing that we do is making sure people stay compliant on the tax side. And to Araminta's point, was a great one around regulation. In 2 years' time in the UK, there's a new piece of regulation kind of coming in. Well, not necessarily regulation, but the tax authority is basically going completely digital. And what that means is that about 6 million self-employed people are going to have to file their tax returns using software, whereas they might do it now on paper, or they might do it directly with the tax authority, and they're no longer going to be able to do that. So that's a kind of rule that's coming in. But not only are they going to have to do it differently, they're going to have to do it quarterly. Yeah, whereas now it's once a year, 10 months after the tax year ends. And in the UK, the tax year ends in April. It's a little bit different from the US, where it's calendar year. And they don't have to file their taxes till January. In 2 years' time, they're going to have to do it on a quarterly basis every 3 months, and they're going to have to actually do it in year. So whilst the tax year is going on, and a lot of people don't know about this. So in terms of talking about finding where the users are, there's a huge amount of education. And what we're doing is we're building a tool, an app that enables people to do all of that and stay compliant and file their returns automatically. But at the same time, we've got a feature that enables people to get paid. So the self-employed, a kind of basic invoicing functionality that enables people to actually get paid through. We have open banking in the UK. And what that means is that it's really like an account-to-account transfer, but without giving the user that's paying your bank details, or even specifying the amount, or having them to kind of key it in. It's all automatic through the banking app. So you just request it, they click a couple of buttons, and then it pays through their banking app directly, and it's immediate. So it saves them costs as well on card and check transactions on there too. So it controls their costs on there too. But fundamentally, we're pulling all of that data together with open banking, and we're helping them file their tax returns directly.
Got it. And so potentially a small business doesn't need to work with a tax preparer in your case, right? If they're using your app.
Yeah. So we work with accountants too, but because whilst we won't replace accountants on there too, there'll be a lot of complex kind of cases where what we do is we refer across to accountants. But a lot of people have very basic tax needs, and they might spend a lot of money on an accountant to do that. We can solve that problem for them at a lower cost and digitally, and then we'll work with accountants too to help them manage their clients digitally too, to enable them to meet the regulation and the rules that are coming in a couple of years' time too.
Okay, got it. And maybe go to Adi next. Tell us about Visita and where are you fitting in, and what some of the pain points that we talked about are you addressing?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm taking down notes for and hopefully context for everyone else here. But I think from Visita standpoint, we were looking when we were analyzing the small business space, and obviously that's a huge amount of different types of professions, different types of businesses. We're focusing specifically on the service provider market. I think Derek mentioned underserved. This is by far, even in terms of small businesses, the most underserved segment, and that's at the same time, this is also the biggest segment. This is 90% of small businesses are service providers that would normally be working, on their phones with their contacts, with their WhatsApp, Excel sheets, some of them with pen and paper. And we are really trying to take their business and bring it to the digital age by really giving them the benefits of what would traditionally be enterprise technology, a CRM, an ability to automate processes, an ability to engage with their clients at scale, And we're really bringing that and redesigning it, rethinking it from a micro business perspective. So, I mean, I often use an example because I realize that's a lot of words that I've just thrown here. But if we think of, any yoga studio, like the yoga studio next to you, they would normally have several instructors in different disciplines. They would have clients that are beginners, clients that are advanced. Some of them will be doing one-on-one sessions. Some of them will be doing classes. Some of them will be paying per session. Some of them bought a package of 10 sessions for the price of 9. Some of them got a coupon ahead of summer, and others have a subscription that allows them to join all classes as long as they signed up in advance to the available spots. And if we take it COVID into consideration as well, nowadays some of them will be taking the class online, some of them will be physically on premise. That is a lot of, you know, business brains for that small business owner to manage on a day-to-day basis. So there's elements here of how they manage their time and their instructors' time. There's elements here of what record they have of their clients, and how do they keep their record of their clients? How do they make sure that those clients don't kind of fade away by engaging with them through marketing? And at the end of the day, how do they make sure that everyone paid for what they should have paid for at the end of the month? So we're looking at that triangle of time, money, and clients, and kind of managing the business brains for our businesses. We're doing that across all service provider verticals. And yeah, that's quite a challenge. That's why we're definitely partnering wherever we can. So that's just to put that out there as well, that we are partnering with complementary technologies to make sure that we serve the segment together as opposed to fragmented
Got
further.
it. Yeah. So a CRM plus digital plus payments and financial aspects kind of all combined into one, maybe a mobile app. So makes life very easy. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Adi. And a quick follow up. Geographically, are you in Israel or expanding? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we're an American company. We're based out of Bellevue, Seattle area. We do have development offices out in Tel Aviv. That's where most of our developers are. Uh, but that's thanks to Startup Nation. I'm sure Nir can speak further about that. But we have global coverage, and we're working, 60% of our audience would be nowadays in the US, and the other 40 mainly in Europe, Australia, South Africa. So yeah, quite the global footprint as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. Maybe go to you, Nathan. You talked about the time and resources constraint. Escrow is somewhat, we kind of just use it when we need it. It's not an everyday thing. So talk a little bit about Z Suite and what you're solving.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the time and operational costs, first off, is driven by a lot of legal ramifications, which is something that Paul had mentioned quite a bit. With United on the tax side there in the UK. But the reason that there's a lot of people that don't know anything about escrow, and it's because tons of people don't touch it. But the people that do have a huge pain point. And that was one of the things that I love that Audie brought up a little bit in regards to what her firm is doing in regards to, like, okay, there's small businesses, but there's tons of different small businesses. A small restaurant owner has very different needs than a small tax accountant versus a small law firm, right? I mean, there are certain things that all of them need. And in that case, you have more general population or mass market type approaches to it, but it's when you really dig deep and understand specific use cases of unique pain points that individually might not seem big enough for a business to attack, that when you step back a little bit and kind of get an idea of the whole spectrum, that it actually seems pretty large. And that's one of the things that we continually look at is, instead of just talking about small businesses, let's talk about what types of small businesses and what exists from that perspective. So at Z Suite, for example, I mean, when you talk about escrow and sub accounts, depending on which state you're in, real estate offices deal with these all the time, title companies, property managers and landlords, law firms, funeral homes, nursing homes. So when you start digging deeper into, okay, who has issues with this one particular pain point based off of legal reasons in regards to, where does the money need to be held? Is there interest? Does the interest go to the person you're holding the money for, or to the business? What do they need to do in regards to the notifications if they're receiving the payments? Like these different types of things that all of them are regulated. Is there a pain point, a broader pain point that we can actually address that now makes the folks that are working in the real estate offices, the property managers, the law firms, people at funeral homes, nursing homes, etc., be like, wow, you not only do you understand small business, you understand my business, and it creates a magical moment, which is really powerful and great, and something that we're really focused on and being able to help and solve.
Yeah, the generalists versus the folks that understand the business, right? Everyone wants them. And we're seeing that trend in the challenger banking space, right? Everything is becoming kind of not just a challenger bank, but kind of a lifestyle application or a segment specific, right? Targeting specific segments, and small business in every which way is one of the segments that need a lot of help. No, thank you, Nathan. So Nir and Araminta, maybe I'll get you in on sales and marketing because you brought that up. Whoever wants to go first, but talk a little bit to small businesses. As we established, right? They are in the business, so they don't have the kind of resources and time to market, to write content about what they're doing, or generating leads, or kind of filling their pipeline or working on their pipeline. So, what are some of the new approaches that I think you are seeing in the market that's happening?
Shall I start? Okay, so I think, Patty, that one of the new approaches here, you mentioned content, right? And content nowadays is everything. So I think that now the new approach should be to catch your customer in the right channel. There are so many channels. We're now talking Clubhouse, there are Connect Club, and so many other channels like WhatsApp or email, newsletter, and social media networks that you can catch your potential client. But I think that if you're working on the multi-channel approach, if you're working on the right content that delivered in the right channel, so you'll probably have a better conversion rate and better onboarding, better chance to onboarding your potential client. We basically help the companies we're working with to not just phrase the right content and the right text. It's not just about the copy and the wording. It's also about the approach. By the way, it's also about the product, the value proposition is super important. I touched that on our last point here, and everybody mentioned here previously in this discussion that we're talking about highly regulated markets. The financial market in different territories is a highly regulated market, and we should approach different markets with different value propositions. So we are helping these companies to reshape their value proposition, to work on product aspects, basically to work on product market fit, to work about the strategy, and to deliver the best product they can according to the current regulation. So I think that the new approach should be the right product to the right market and meeting your potential client in the channel that he wants to meet you. And I think if you follow these very basic rules, you probably have greater chances to onboard new clients.
Yeah, but you are part of such an organization, I think, with the Tel Aviv Fintech Association. So you probably do this to your clients. Are you seeing more models like this, Nir, or is your model super successful in supporting your ecosystem with what you just described?
So yeah, we're currently working with, in the Israeli Fintech Association, we're in touch with about 800 50, give or take, different fintech companies. They're offering different solutions in really variety of subsegments. We're not talking just about payments here. Fintech is not just PayPal, as we all know. We're talking about risk assessment and underwriting solution. We're including blockchain and cryptocurrency solutions in there. Any cybersecurity solution designated for the financial industry, it's of course included in this list, including authentication, anti-fraud, identity management, identity theft, etc. We are, of course, talking about wealth management solutions or capital market solutions, all kinds of trading platforms. We're talking about alternative lenders, financial planning and financial education applications, many insurtech solutions in our lists as well, and RegTech and compliance, as we just mentioned, that you can't go without them. So yeah, we definitely help all these guys to reshape their value proposition. We know similar models working in different markets. We're based in Israel, but it's maybe important to mention that 90% of the Israeli startup companies, 90 of the Israeli startup companies are exporting their solutions to different markets. There are only 10% of the solutions, of the tech solutions in Israel that consider Israel as a market. Israel is a very small market with hardly 9 million citizens. We are usually exporting our solutions to different markets and reshaping the value proposition to suit different regulatory regimes in different markets is a super important thing. So yeah, we do that globally. We work with the startups in our lists to help them to do that in a global scale.
Yeah, no, thank you. Araminta, I think Nair underscored the importance of content. iValley, as some of you know, does a lot of content, and we're kind of like a media property, and we've been doing this since 2016. A lot of the VC firms in the Valley are kind of starting off kind of media properties, if you will. The argument being, or the reason being, is that it's not only important to build the future, invest in the future, but it's also important to write and talk about the future. I think you're in the middle of that, Araminta. You do that. But my question to you is, yeah, the startups with venture backing, they have the resources to kind of spend on something like that. But if you're talking about the restaurateur and other small businesses, like some of what Adi kind of talk about, the service provider, the single owner small business, what's your guideline? How will they kind of generate content to attract? How can they?
I mean, I'm going to be a bit honest here. I don't really work for restaurateurs or small law firms or small businesses. These are not the kind of companies that I help. I help fintech companies, which is a little bit different. So what I can touch on is a little bit on content marketing, and then what I see fintech companies are doing in order to reach out to these small businesses. Because from what I understand, most people here listening are fintech companies, right? They're trying to reach out to these small businesses. In terms of content, I think everyone, you, Paddy, and Nir have kind of touched on it. Why is content so important nowadays? There's a statistic out there that says that like 80% of the decision has already been made by the time a company reaches out to a provider or to a marketing agency or whatever. And that's because people like doing their research, right? And with Google and online. And so really you want to be part of that research. You want to be giving them that information so that you're part of the research, and when it's time to make a decision, they think of you. This is why content is important, and it's kind of probably the future. In terms of what I'm seeing fintech companies doing to reach out to these small businesses, it's all about really understanding inside out who they are. And I think what Nathan was saying was really interesting and completely true, how there's so many different sectors, and you kind of need to understand the different problems that every single one is going through. So I can use an example. I recently had Oak North on the podcast, and their target. Oak North is a lending company, and they issue loans of £500 million to a lot more. So it's minimum. So we're not talking about small startups here. We're talking about bigger companies, and they decided to focus on one marketing activity that would work, which is having entrepreneurs over for dinner at the CEO's house. I think they were like monthly dinners. Instead of, going on social media or one could even argue content, right? Or other marketing activities that everyone tells you to do, they were like, well, okay, sure, that brings in a lot of leads, but they're not very high quality leads. We need to go where we know are these much higher quality people who will actually serve or be interested in what we do. So I think it comes down to do a lot of customer research, understanding them inside out, testing, and then once you've figured out that marketing approach that offers the most traction, you kind of go full on. That's likely applicable also to restaurateurs and to small businesses, but I mean, it kind of depends on each sector. Each sector is so different. I'm not sure how to generalize there. So yeah, hopefully that's useful.
Yeah. No, it is useful. I'm not didn't mean to put you on the spot there, Armand. I know that you kind of write or work with fintech companies, but I think how I was seeing it is that maybe it's an opportunity for some of these small business fintechs like Audie's, Visita, or Derek's auto books to also address the sales and marketing aspects, right? Give them kind of a digital presence or help support them in their kind of sales and marketing and even content marketing aspects. But it's something to think about. But thank you all for those remarks. I think we're kind of almost close to the top of the hour. I wanted to do a reset kind of in the middle, but I'll do a quick reset, and then I have a couple of other questions that I want to pose to you guys. So for those who are just joining, you're listening to the Fintech Talk Show. I'm your host, Paddy Ramanathan. We're speaking to a very diverse group and sophisticated perspective on challenger banks and fintechs for SMBs or small businesses. Listeners may find it very useful to understand how fintechs are uniquely positioned for SMBs, what they're doing to differentiate from big tech and the first generation fintechs like Square, what opportunities do they see, and what the challenges do they face. If you want to learn more, don't go anywhere. We're not wrapping up. We have a couple of rounds planned. We usually go over 1 p.m. Pacific. But if you have a friend who would like the topic, don't be shy to hit the plus button, invite them over, nudge them. And if you want to participate, I know several people raised hands and then raise them back. Just back channel me on Clubhouse that you're okay to be recorded, and then I'll bring you up. Definitely come in for. I have a couple of more rounds of questions, but definitely encourage audience participation as well. So those who raised your hand, if you want to come back, do come back. Do check out our Substack site, fintechtalk.substack.com. Do register, and we recap most of these conversations there. And we're going to publish from today kind of a podcast there as well, or just a recording. So, guys, I think some of you, I think Derek and maybe Nathan, you talked about it too. The direct to consumer or direct to small business, I should say, DTSB, versus partnership with bank or other channels, right? There's obviously pros and cons on both sides. Several first generation fintech like Square, SoFi, and others now have a banking license, so there's a huge emphasis on direct marketing and getting the SMB. As you all know, Square recently announced a small business checking account. I think only in the U.S., but they're targeting that space, and it's potentially a competition for banks. So the question to you is, I think some of you are choosing one model over the other. So talk about that, and why are you focusing on that? Maybe Derek, yeah, go.
Yeah, I kind of hit on it earlier. I mean, for us, it was as an organization, how do you go raise enough capital to go compete against Square, PayPal, QuickBooks of the world, direct to consumer, in a timely fashion. And so when we looked at the market, we see opportunity where there's a large underserved market, which is small business owners, micro business owners, and our background in, mine specifically in the teams of working in core banking, digital banking, other fintech services, understanding that there's only, a certain number of technology companies that really power the vast majority of financial institutions in the country. It's how do you go help a massively underserved market via leveraged distribution? And so it was, a lot of it is an economic decision. And so we can go and create integrations with the dominant vendors, if you will. We can build a solution that fits the need. We are also a big jobs to be done shop, as Paul has mentioned a couple of times, and we have a really firm grasp around the jobs that business owners have when it comes to cash flow management and accepting payments specific to their banking relationship. And so we're building out around those capabilities, and then leveraging the existing relationship, branch network, infrastructure in place with the financial institutions to go to market and to, quite frankly, make an impact with business owners.
Got it. And Paul, meaning we talk about Square because they made the recent announcement. If you go up the chain, so to speak, and talk about Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Apple recently announced a BNPL, buy now pay later, with Goldman. So they're getting big into fintech. So I think Derek raises this point about capital and how the importance of partnership. But can fintechs like yours, can they take on this kind of first generation fintechs and big tech competition? And if so, how?
Well, it's interesting, and being in kind of tech space, we're already seeing, certainly in the US, probably the next level down, which I think is where we really need to be looking, not necessarily the Apple and the Google and the Facebook and Amazon side, but next level down, the Squares, the Stripes, the Spotifys. If you look at Square, when Intuit divested Credit Karma tax, Square or Cash App, purchased that. You got Stripe's acquisition of TaxJar. That's kind of where, on the tax side, we're starting to see some movement, which is really exciting. In a space that people are starting to talk about tax a little bit more on there too. So, I think in terms of competing, we're going to see more of the next level down kind of tech, not the kind of first tier giants, but maybe the second tier, or some of them are becoming first tier, like Stripe, for example, starting to kind of come into this space. And the extension of Square into banking in Shopify, which I think is a sleeping giant, whether in terms of small business, certainly kind of for the online merchants. That's where I think that there's going to be a lot of activity. And if you think about, take Shopify as an example, when I looked last year, and I haven't looked recently, but they have over 5,000 apps in their marketplace which plug into Shopify in a number of areas. And I think when I looked, whether there was only 20 or 30 that were financial apps, but then they launched Shopify, I think Shopify Capital. They started doing banking services too. So there's definitely a growing movement amongst these tech giants in that second level. And I think the most interesting piece is they have a lot of distribution in place already. So I think that there's opportunities for fintechs to partner at that level on the big tech side of things, and also still with the same partnerships with banks. And the other one that's really interesting, and the one that we explore a lot, is looking at communities. So I think somebody said earlier around going to where kind of finding the users. Addy said finding the users and where they are. It is a lot of them are, let's say, gig workers. There's a lot of people who tried side hustles, and that's the growing kind of trend now, I think, in terms of gig work. We're certainly in the US, and we're seeing it a lot in the UK. Looking at where those companies, or those companies that are employing, or not necessarily employing, but have gig workers working for them. There's a bit of a kind of legal whether in the UK whether they work for them or they're employed, but they're self-employed. Working with companies like that that have big communities of self-employed and business owners is another area where we're exploring as well.
Got it. Yeah, no. Others, feel free to chime in. I think bank partnerships, big tech partnership. I heard the co-opetition aspect, right? So they might become competitors, but also maybe partners. and the gig economy workers. So others, feel free to chime in if you have.
If I may, yeah, hi, this is Adi. I think there's first of all, we look at this from the perspective of a customer, of a company that didn't make the choice. We have both direct and channels partnerships, so I can possibly give insight to both, and also how they you can leverage on having a direct channel and having that proximity to the end customer to then bring that extra knowledge and that value to the channel. But I think there's also another question here, and again, picking up on that concept of finding the customers where they are. If you ask, and this is something that, of course, people regularly do, that there's run surveys that ask small business owners where would they like to see, to receive advice, or where would their all-in-one or super app be in terms of who is their trusted advisor. You get all kinds of responses, and that is very much a question of the profile of the business owner, as opposed to whether or not we would like to approach them in a certain way. And a lot of them say, I will always buy tech directly from the SaaS provider. That is, they're looking for that innovation. They're looking for, the techie seal on their products. And a lot of them say, I think an equal amount, if not more, say, I want to buy all of my technology and have all of my financials served from a single place, and that would be my bank. We see a huge trend right now of younger people saying, I want it from my bank, but I want my bank to be different to the banks that my parents banked with previously, which is driving the growth of challenger banks. So I think, as Derek said earlier, the industry is very fragmented, and that means that consumers have a lot of choice, and that there's in a way plenty of customers to go around all of these different apps and all of these different approaches. And I think it's not necessarily, as you said as well, it's not necessarily one or the other. It's also a question of do you partner strategically to reach the audience where they prefer to be reached?
Great. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, Adi, I fully agree with what Adi just said. And, if we look at the trend, I think that at the beginning, companies like PayPal, they were maybe the first fintech to go B2C and to try to disrupt the banking industry. But if we look now at the fintech industry and fintech space in general, the trend is going with the banks and helping the banks. Adi just said that they have two streams. They go B2B2C and they go B2C, or B2B and B2C. But I guess that the main trend here is to be not just a disruptor, but also an enabler to the financial industry. Means that I can also sell to end clients and disrupt the traditional banking industry, but I can also support the banking industry to work in a much efficient manner. And we talked about digital banks, and goes without saying, digital banks are on the rise right now. I think that the COVID-19 situation also backed them up, with people trying to secure more banking applications and to use more banking applications in a digital way. We see, you guys, you're in San Francisco, in the area, you have Varo just raised a $240 million Series D, and we have Nubank from Brazil raised $300 million last year. We have N26 operating in Berlin, Europe, raised $100 million, and Monzo as well. So we see the rounds are huge, and the valuations are really unbelievable. And this is because the value proposition they offer much more to the end client. So it's not just the mobile centric approach that all the youngsters are now looking for. It's much more integrated personal finance management tools. And we talked about the cash flow and the cash flow problem that small and medium businesses have. I think that small and medium businesses are also enjoying different offerings of challenger banks and digital banks. Usually they're much easier to use. They're much easier to onboard. They're much more transparent. Challenger banks, they'll be cheaper as well, with low fees, much lower fees, or even free usage. They offer different extra features like frictional shares trading and different stuff that a traditional banking industry does not offer nowadays. So obviously challenger banks are there, and I think that the big techs are also trying to compete this and to join the party and to compete with these companies. And of course the traditional financial industry, they can only use fintech companies and get their support to be more innovative and to keep the competition running and to keep themselves in the game. So they have to do that.
Yeah, I think Araminta and Paul, both of you were trying to get in. Go ahead. Whoever wants to go first.
I'll jump in. As I kind of worked in banks for a long time, and now kind of in fintech as well, the banks are notoriously slow to kind of do a lot of things. But they want to do a lot of things, but they've got so many things that they're trying to do that by not by design, but just because there's so many things and so many priorities, things take a long time to do that. It's giving the opportunities previously, as Addy says, for challengers to kind of rise and provide better services, better values. But the banks, certainly in the UK, have started to catch up, and they're starting to offer solutions that match what the challenger banks have done, and basically the challenger banks have essentially written the roadmap for the banks. So there's a lot of on the par banking there. But now with open banking in the UK, we're also starting to see people provide solutions over the top of banking with no need to have a license to provide the things that Nia was saying around fractional share options. So fintechs are coming in that don't have a license, don't have challenger bank status, but actually are able to do account aggregation, to do payment facilitation between accounts without having to have that license. So I think we're going to see more and more over the top banking, or over the top kind of fintechs that can still offer all of those services and can be much more nimble. And that's where, if you think about the UK, we only have 300 odd banks within the UK, where there's over 10,000 in the US.
Close
on
to,
there too.
yeah, close to,
yeah. So I think it used to be 15,000 when I was there kind of 10 years ago, but it's still a huge amount more. So I think there's still an opportunity for fintechs to partner with banks to move them faster and to move them ahead of the challenges as well, because there's limitation and capital requirements and things like that are going to hold them back a little bit too, with obviously the exceptions as you mentioned, those banks that have raised a lot of capital there to build a lot of that stuff in house, and to also partner with other fintechs to power some of that functionality too.
Yeah, Nathan, go.
Okay, sorry.
Araminta, you were trying to get in early.
I
Go
mean,
ahead first.
it's just I'm just very short. I just wanted to piggyback on what Paul says, and also kind of respond to your early question about marketing and sales with an example. Kind of everything that we're talking about here, working on top of the banks. One good example is unified commerce, which is essentially it's the omni-channel stuff, so being able to purchase from your phone and from a computer at the same time. But on top of that, the merchant, the small business, the restaurant, or the restaurant can see everything on one dashboard. So they can see kind of when a user or when a customer buys from their phone, and then when they come into the shop and then they buy inside the shop. So that's one way that the fintechs are helping with that. And then an example of what Paul is talking about is a client of mine called Pomelo Pay, and they offer something called unified payments. And you have an amazing situation where you've got a customer who can buy with a QR code. They don't even need to take out their cards. They just go in and use their phone to pay with their QR codes. Then they can also pay with remote payment links if it's like a contractor. And then you've got e-commerce happening through an online shop. And then you've got APIs that are connecting with maybe the merchant. You're using a payment processor, and then obviously it's connecting with the e-commerce, the shop, the online shop of the merchant. And so I was just thinking that was a really interesting example, and good use case just of what Paul was saying. That's what I wanted to say. Go ahead, Nathan.
Great. Yeah, Nathan, maybe get your remarks and then go into closing, but go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was just going to add one additional thing that I hadn't heard touched on quite a bit in the direct model versus the partnering with banks model. As you know, when Derek shared with Autobooks from an economic perspective in the ability to get users and distribution as compared to some of the other providers that are already in the space, that have already built out that user base, et cetera, that's definitely kind of the first question that we also looked at from a go-to-market perspective. If we can partner with banks that already have a built-in audience of users that we know are going to use it, that seems to be a very efficient marketing mechanism to be able to have direct connection of relationships that are created that have trust, where we can get distribution of our products to be able to then help them save time and money, right? That was kind of the first piece. But the second piece is after you worry about go-to-market, and in many cases for some of these startups like Square, PayPal, et cetera, after you achieve the dominance that you're looking for in regards to acquisition and you start thinking more about your overall lifetime profitability, there's only so much lifetime profitability you can create from a small business, especially if you're only helping them with a portion of their business or you're only helping them with cost savings or efficiency, right? So a company can only make as much money in relation to how much value that they could create within the business themselves. And so what's interesting when you throw a bank in there is that the overall profitability that a bank can get from a small business also includes the profitability that they can drive from their deposits as well as from their lending. So some initial estimates from our perspective, when we looked at how much value creation we had for a property manager, as an example, let's say, just for intents and purposes, let's say that was $1 of value creation because of the time that it saved. When we then looked at the time that we saved plus what a bank could make in lifetime profitability off of deposits and lending, in many instances, that was as much as 10x more. And so obviously we're not the only ones that have seen this, because this is exactly the reason that you're starting to see a lot of these direct to businesses or direct to consumer fintechs wanting to get deeper into the banking space, is because they can do that exact same math that I just did. Right. And so it's an interesting race now to kind of watch. As Paul had mentioned, a lot of the banks are starting to figure out how to compete and moving faster and doing the things that they need to do. But at the same time, they did leave the door open for a lot of these bigger direct to fintech companies getting an established relationship with many of their customers.
Yeah, no, good point. Meaning, obviously, assets have more leverage and interchange fees come in. So if you're just solving operational perspective, you save $1. But if you kind of solve financial stuff, then you save 10 or more, and so on. Or there's potential. But thanks, Nathan. That was very well articulated, and I think a good point to keep in mind as fintechs like yourselves design kind of your roadmap going forward as to what problems, and you also brought up that 360 view of the small business, right? If you're solving one pain point, that's one thing, but if you want dominance, if you kind of solve their entire workflow, so to speak, then there's more chance of you capturing a bigger market. It's when you're having fun, time flies. It's 75 minutes since we've been talking. I have really enjoyed it. but we have to build the futures we're talking about. So everyone has to go. And we're recording this and going to post it as a podcast. So we don't want to make it too long that people don't click on it. So I want to kind of go around the table and ask our esteemed panel, what does the future hold for small business fintech? And we talked a little bit about that already, but take your crystal ball out. Will they morph into a challenger bank? Like I think Near took some examples, kind of a small business. I think there's some already like that. I think one in France that I know of. Or a small business super app, like that 360-degree view, right? Taking everything that a small business knows, or the Shopify example, like which is an app store for small business. What will it be like? Will the super app like kind of the day in life of a small business owner? And then kind of on the competitive space, right? Looks like a lot of players are seeing this as a growth market. So the banks, as Nathan just articulated, there's a lot of money to be made. Big tech, the tier one fintech, if I kind of can differentiate them as a separate segment. So a lot of them are in the race. Who will win? So take your crystal ball and tell us your prediction of this space. And I will let you or I'll give you choice to go. Whoever wants to go first. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Go ahead.
So I think eventually like the winner will be the small business owner, and I think it's we see a lot of spaces definitely in fintech or in financial services that are and do remain fragmented over many years. The payments market has been fragmented forever. I don't think necessarily there needs to be, a single winner over others, but rather that there will be more choice for the businesses that are looking to become, whether it's more efficient or free up more of their time or communicate better with the ecosystem. I think there's definitely enough small businesses to go around, and then some. We're not even close to covering to good coverage of the market opportunity. That's it. Even now, with all of this competition, it's a blue ocean still. And I think it will depend greatly on the persona of the small business and their preference. And this is where we want to be. I think we all mentioned the word underserved. I think our first and foremost challenge is to serve. And if we're talking about an underserved market and we're putting more options and more opportunities into an underserved market, first and foremost, it's going to be served. Will it be saturated? I don't think anytime soon.
Great.
Yeah, I can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can add to that. I mean, yeah, probably the future of small and medium businesses in terms of innovation and technology relies on two aspects. I think that we should talk about the back end and about the front end. So we were talking about cash flow management and cash flow difficulties for small and medium businesses. And yes, that's inherent in every small and medium business. I mean, it's a given. So talking about the back end, yeah, data points, this is the key. Working with your data, working with your accountant, as Paul mentioned before, on different automations, automatic processes, robotic process automation in the back end of tax reports or other stuff. So this is super important. And small and medium businesses are working hard to deal with bureaucracy. So talking about back end processes, undoubtedly, this is going to be a game changer for small and medium businesses to adopt back-end solutions. Talking about the front end, and we discussed this before as well, client engagement, seamless onboarding, KYC, KYB sometimes depends if you're selling to businesses. Sometimes it's even KYT in terms of know your transaction, if you're dealing with cryptocurrencies or with stocks. So, these kind of things are super important to basically have a better conversion rates. This is the only thing that the small and medium business wants to do to improve the sales cycle, to improve the chance to have a sale from a starting point to an end point, a quicker sales cycle. This is the end goal. So front end solutions as well. I think this should be the next leap for small and medium businesses to integrate these kind of solutions. So if we're talking about the future of small and medium businesses in terms of technology, we should definitely talk about these two aspects, front end and back end. And we see different fintechs and other startup companies solving all kinds of challenges in both these streams.
Go ahead, Armenta.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, I think we can all agree that the future is only going to be more digital. And in order for small businesses to understand digital and to use digital to grow, fintech is an inherent part of that. In order to accept online payments, you need fintech. In order to accept offline payments, you need fintech too, since cash is just disappearing slowly. In order to anything to do with payments is going to be fintech. And so in the future, I read this in the newsletter recently, fintech is going to be $1 trillion industry, most likely, and it's not even going to be, it's going to be like, I don't know, the internet almost. It's just an inherent part of digital. So I think it'll just, merchants will be using fintech to enable a much better customer experience. And as other people have mentioned, at the end of the day, small businesses just want to be able to do what they love, and all the admin and all the boring stuff, they can leave that to someone else, and fintech helps with that. So I just think it's just more of what we're seeing at the moment.
Yep, I will add to that. I echo that statement. I commonly refer to business owners as like they're like running water, and they're going to find the lowest point of resistance, and that's where they're going to reside. And so if I'm a software company that's built a really great app that enables landscapers to provide estimates and do invoicing and manage their business, and that app provider embeds fintech, and I'm a business owner, and it's super easy for me to do everything through that app provider, then I'm going to run my business and finances there long term. If financial institutions can figure it out and make it simple for business owners to do the basic things that they need as they see fit related to collection of customer payments, access to capital, et cetera, then I think that they will be able to win the day with many relationships as well. I think it will remain fragmented, but those providers that find the easiest on ramps and provide access to the tools and the utility as defined by least path of resistance to the business owners are going to be the ones that win the day.
Awesome. Go ahead, Nathan.
Well, first, I would like to start off with saying I loved Addie's response that she predicts that the real winners are going to be the small businesses, because I totally agree with that. It's going to be easier and easier and easier to start and run small businesses in the future, and I think that's really exciting. On who's going to be the winner, is it going to be, and from model perspective, is it going to be direct to, or is it going to be through bank partnerships? I think that's going to continue to be a competition moving forward, and that there's enough space for both of them. From a fintech provider, I think that there's the natural state of technology is to be more of a monopoly or oligopoly. So I think that there are going to be winners and losers. And the people that are going to continue to win, or the businesses that are going to continue to win, are redefining markets to be able to create their own monopoly and oligopoly for a smaller niche that they're focused on.
Me left. So if you follow me on social media, you'll know I've got a favorite hashtag, which is SME super apps are coming. And I firmly believe that if the model for in Asia around super apps was there for consumers, the model for the Western world is there for small business owners. I think Matt Harris from Bain said there are over 14,000 pieces of software for small business owners, and this was a couple of years ago. So my prediction is that there's going to be, fintech is already a kind of great ecosystem, a very open ecosystem. That ecosystem is going to be more open. It's going to go beyond banking to kind of solve problems that are not just financial side of things on the banking side. And I think that effort to do that is going to require, there's a long-term effort to require to create long-term value, which needs to start now. And these super apps that are coming will have a super disruptive and dominant ecosystem already in place. And whilst small business owners, going back to what people were saying, aren't aware of these solutions yet, they don't know what's out there, they need help, their thirst for convenience, simplicity, clarity kind of in their business lives and personal lives, I think we'll see a number of players, and banks included, envelop themselves around them before they realize it. And I think banks have a really great opportunity to partner with fintechs to extend those solutions for small business owners. And one of the things that they've got is that relationship with their bank. So whilst people want to go to their bank and talk to their bank about these, as Addy was saying, I think earlier, the banks have an opportunity to help business owners know what apps are out there, know what that can help them do those jobs to be done. And I think Addy said it perfectly. The winner will be the small business owners.
Awesome. I like that sentiment as well. Whether it's more choices, more digital, fintech as its own industry, or the SME super apps, the SMEs and the small business owners win. I love that. And when all of that happens, we'll definitely be talking about that on this show, the Fintech Talk show. Let me thank all the speakers and the audience for sticking around. It's almost 1:30. And thank you, speakers, for sharing your views so generously. For the Fintech Talk show schedule, please go to fintechtalk.co. We have some shows planned for the coming weeks, and since this is being recorded, it's fintechtalk.co always has our schedule. Usually our shows are Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific. Definitely subscribe or check out our Substack, fintechtalk.substack.co. Thank you all. I'll leave the room open for a few seconds if you have to make any announcements of anything upcoming. But this is a wrap. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Paddy.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. It's great talking
Thanks
to
to everybody
everybody.
on the panel.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.